These open source tools run your entire stack, and they do it completely for free, on your own local hardware, with no one snooping and no cloud provider secretly hiking prices. Download once, own forever, and enjoy the benefits of never having to pay for a SaaS tool again. So to get the whole thing running, you just start right at number 10. Number 10 is Tesseract, which is the simplest piece of software on this list. It does one job, which is pulling readable text out of any picture, screenshot, or scanned document directly on your own machine. The repository describes itself simply as an open source OCR engine. Usually, if you want to digitize paperwork, cloud providers rent you a Vision API and charge you for every page you process. This is where you see the pattern that runs through this video, because Tesseract runs on your hardware, so there is no meter running and nobody is charging you per page. But getting words off a page is one thing, so what are you supposed to do if the text it extracts is in a language you can't read? The instinct is to grab the text and paste it into a translation website, which works fine right up until you stop and ask what happens to that document when you hit enter. For a random blog post, it doesn't matter, but if you translate a legal contract or a medical letter, you uploaded confidential data to a server you don't control. LibreTranslate gives you a free and open source machine translation API that runs directly on your own hardware. It's a well-established project that almost nobody outside this world has heard of, and it handles the translation without the document being uploaded anywhere. Its own page describes it as self-hosted and offline capable, which is the entire point, because it means a contract never leaves the room it's sat in. Making the free swap buys you something the paid cloud alternatives can't offer, because your document stays put. But that handles text somebody has already written down, which leaves the question of what to do about words nobody has ever typed. Instead of paying a cloud service to transcribe your meetings, you can run a project called Scriberr. Its own page describes it as an audio transcription app, and because it ships ready to run in Docker, you avoid compiling dependencies by hand. It operates as a self-contained package on the hardware you already own, so you replace a monthly subscription with a local tool that keeps the recording of your voice on your own machine. The repository is a small project compared to everything else here, which is why it stays mostly unknown. So everything you own is text now, but how do you look things up without somebody recording what you asked? Every query you type into a major provider is saved in a log attached to your identity. So if you want to stop generating that record, you have to run the search infrastructure yourself. Number 7 is SearXNG, which its own page describes as a free internet meta search engine. It runs locally on your hardware and aggregates results from various search services, gathering the links you need while you're the one running the application. Because you host it, the underlying providers only see the aggregator instead of your network, meaning you get the results without the engine getting you. Running search this way removes the record, rather than relying on an incognito window to hide it, and the activity on the repository shows how many developers are making that switch. It finds you the pages, but a search engine only gives you the raw links. What reads them and gives you the answer? What you pay $20 a month for is a system that reads those raw links and writes a direct response. Number 6 replaces that subscription. If you search for how to do this yourself, every article tells you to install a project called Perplexica. But if you look for it today, the repository is now called Vane. That single rename is a sign of how fast this world moves. Its description reads that Vane is an AI-powered answering engine. It takes the results your machine just pulled and writes out an answer. So the entire workflow runs on your hardware. This means the most recognizable subscription in the category is matched by a tool that costs nothing. That works if the information you want is public, but what is supposed to read the private files sitting in the folders on your own disk. Khoj is an assistant that reads your own folders, and its headline calls it your AI second brain. The description below that says it gets answers from the web or your docs, meaning it searches your private files to find what you asked for. It also points out that the software is self-hostable, which is a strict requirement for this to work. A paid cloud service could only answer questions about your files if you uploaded every document you own to them first. Running it yourself provides a capability the paid tools can't match at any price, because keeping your documents local is the only way to keep them private. All of this is running on your machine right now, but it operates entirely in the background. To use it without writing API requests in a terminal, you still need an interface you can talk to. Number 4 is WebUI. Its own description calls it a user-friendly AI interface, which means it wraps this entire setup into a chat window that looks and behaves exactly like the paid service you probably already use. So instead of typing terminal commands or writing API requests to stitch these tools together, you just open a tab and start asking questions. The README goes further and calls it a self-hosted AI platform, because this interface isn't a website hosted on a company's server somewhere. It runs entirely on the machine sitting on your desk. And that creates a major structural difference from the cloud tools. Because you own the host, the page states it is designed to operate entirely offline. If you unplug your router right now, you don't lose access to your assistant, your chat history, or your documents, because none of that depends on a round trip to a data center to function. You can disconnect your network cable and still have a full conversation with your own files. But an interface doesn't actually generate the answers itself, and the description explicitly mentions it supports Ollama. We replace the search engines, the transcribers, and the chat window, but something underneath this stack still has to be doing the thinking. That something is Ollama. It's the engine that loads and executes the language models powering every tool we just assembled. The search wrappers and transcription apps we just installed are only interfaces. Their job is to take your prompt and pass it to Ollama running in the background. It acts as the local server for your models. The project's own description lists the current models it'll run for you by name, letting you pull everything from DeepSeek and Gemma to Qwen. This means that for the entire stack we've built so far, nothing gets sent to a cloud service, because all the processing happens directly on the hardware you already own. The system is yours, and it never charges a monthly fee, but it only works while you're sitting at your keyboard giving it instructions. Which leaves an open question in the workflow, because a system isn't automated if it stops doing its job the second you stand up and walk away from your desk. To make these programs work together while you're asleep, you connect the separate pieces into chains that execute on their own, and Activepieces is the tool that handles that. Its page files it under workflow automation, which means it runs in the background, passing data from one step to the next. Because you run the free edition yourself on your own hardware, it has unlimited runs, so using it more doesn't cost more. This makes the stack stop being a collection of tools and start being a system that runs unattended. But an automation chain does exactly what it's told, so if you're no longer the one typing the instructions, something else has to decide what to tell it to do. The piece that sits at the top of that chain, deciding what to tell it, is OpenHands, an autonomous coding agent project. OpenHands operates the tools underneath it, which means the finished stack now reads, translates, transcribes, searches, answers, thinks, acts, and decides entirely on hardware you own. You can point it at a model running on your own machine instead of a paid one over the internet. The trade you make is that a local model good enough to run unattended needs a serious graphics card, or a Mac with a lot of memory in it. The hardware costs money, but you only pay it once, so knowing all that, is running this yourself worth it? For most of this stack, the answer is yes, because the engine running it all is a straight replacement where you give up nothing. The honest bill is hours, not money, because you can expect to spend a couple of hours a month keeping it updated and backed up. There are also two places where you should just keep paying for the commercial versions. LibreTranslate works well, but if you need to translate anything outside of European languages, the accuracy drops compared to the paid tools. And while Tesseract handles printed pages, if you try to read handwritten meeting notes, it struggles while the paid vision models still win. But for the other 8 tools, the choice is clear. If keeping your documents private or running unmetered automated workflows is worth an afternoon of Docker setup to you, then you should install this stack tonight. If it isn't, just keep paying for your current subscriptions. Anyways, that's all folks.